Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Ruben. Welcome back to the Seasonal Movement Podcast. Today we have Terry. She is an author, a speaker, and authenticity coach who helps people transcend fear, reframe limiting beliefs, and live with grounded purpose. I mean, I love the way that sounds. I don't know about you, but she integrates mind, body, and spirit. I already have a bunch of questions to build emotional resilience, restore balance, and support authentic living. What a great mission.
Thank
And
you.
she offers, you're welcome. She offers practical tools for staying present, transforming fear into focus, and aligning mindset with purpose for sustainable growth. I mean, there is so many words that we use at the seasonal movement that I want to go deep into. Hi, Terry. How are you? Welcome.
I'm good, Ruben. I'm doing fine. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, well, we are glad to have you. I have a few words here in my head that just came out of your introduction. When we're talking about sustainable growth, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
For me, that means that you have an open mind, that you're not closed-minded about anything, that you have a growth mindset. What I mean by that is you are still curious. If you look at children, especially those under the age of 5 who haven't been to school yet, they are so curious about everything. And they'll lay on the ground and watch an ant carry a leaf and are just memorized by it. And we lose that as we get older. And children lose that as they enter school, and they're then told that they can't just be curious, they have to focus. And we get all strangled up in becoming part of society and not allowing our uniqueness and our curiosity to lead the growth process that we have. So because of that, we lose some of that curiosity, we lose some of that belief that everything is limitless. Ruben, do you realize how limitless you are? Anything you put your mind to, you can figure out. That is the great gift that humanity was given with the brains that we have, which the only limits that we have are those that we impose on ourselves.
I agree. I agree. I part of my sustainable process to keep growing, I would say the last few years have been to allow myself, and I do a lot of work, try to be more like a child and allow my curiosity just to pay attention. You're just mentioning the ants, and I haven't gone there yet, but I do pay a lot of attention on the migration of animals throughout the seasons, on how the seasonal change makes me feel, what triggers inside my body, my brain. And it really hits me when you're saying that because I implement that in my life. And I think that in order for us to live well, we have to have that mindset because, like you say, society just like tries to cut that from our lives and be like, just do your job, be a parent, play your role, and paying attention to what's happening around you is childish. But in reality, like that's like the beauty of life.
Correct. And we lose that childlike state, that curiosity, the ability to understand the world around us in a way that is specific to us. You react to things a certain way because of the seasons. I react to certain things because of the phases of the moon, not just biologically, because that is definitely true for female hormones, but also from an energetic perspective. It's really cold here in Atlanta today, and it's the first really, really cold day we've had. And my body is just not wanting to move as much.
Oh yeah.
And and we're supposed to then realize that if I tried doing a whole lot of things today that were physical, my body would not cooperate. And I
Yes.
have to be aware and present to know that my body needs some time to adjust to the colder temperatures. And that's what seasons are for. I mean, we really need to pay attention to how Mother Earth has her seasons and what we're supposed to do in those seasons as well.
I agree. I love how you bring that up because here on my desk I have my happy light, I have my red light therapy, I have my standing desk, and I have a walking treadmill. And it's because of recognition that in the winter we tend to move a lot less. Since we don't move that much, we don't go outside as much, so we don't get the blue light, we don't get the red light, and that creates an impact in our hormones, our neurotransmitters, our
Correct.
body, and it can be expressed as energetic. If we're not moving much, if we're not getting sunlight, if we're not connecting to the outdoors, I like to say that the biggest energetic shift that exists is out there in nature. when the seasons change, like what you're feeling today, that is extremely cold, like that is an energetic shift in the environment. There is a
Correct.
gigantic polar vortex coming in that's carrying energy. And it's funny to think that we have evolved to a degree to think that we're disconnected from that, when in reality, it really hit us to our core.
It does. And for as much as society wants to claim that we have evolved and we don't need Mother Nature, the reality is that is so untrue. Our souls need Mother Nature. We need to connect with Mother Earth on a regular basis so that we can stay grounded in what truly matters versus what society says matters.
I agree. So one of the practices that I have is I have 3 kids under 7. So being a dad also involves to bring them with you, and we go outside on nature walks, just the park down the street, the little forest, the creek, and it's snowy and it's great. So it's like finding fun in those. It's not extreme to a degree, like you're not gonna die, but it's different. It's a very unique day when it's snowing, right? So it's
Correct.
like, hey, let's take advantage of this moment to connect with nature in a unique way that is not available, 360 days of the year, or there's very few rare snowfalls that are good enough to go outside and enjoy it. And it's like, as we're walking through this forest, it's like, hey, this is a great spot to have a snowball fight, right? So it's just encouraging my kids to connect with nature and don't just push them inside, which honestly is like 99% of society. It's like, don't go
Correct.
outside, it's too cold or it's snowing. And it's like, that is the time you should actually go out there so you experience something unique.
Correct. And society wants us all to be the same. It doesn't particularly talk about the uniqueness that each of us are meant to be. We are not meant to be the same. We are meant to be boldly, uniquely ourselves. And when we wake up to that authenticity and understand that I'm supposed to be a bold, vibrant person, and I step into that and I'm being my authentic self, others can too. They see me as an example. They see you as an example to be able to say, hey, maybe I can do that.
I agree. That's funny. That is within a bunch of little steps. That is the second step in my epigenetic seasonal programming method, basically, because the first step is understand your environment. It's like, how much time have we ever put into understanding our surroundings and the lighting pattern and the temperature pattern and how life works, seasonally around us? Like, unless you're proactive about it, you don't just go to school and somebody teaches you that. Like, that's a
Correct.
lost art. And it doesn't really take that much, but you want to actually understand that. And then the second step is to understand your unique biology. Because I do think that things go wrong when we're looking at YouTube for improvement, for advice, and there's a lot out there. And I would say a lot of it comes with really good intention, but the reality is like somebody giving me advice in Florida in January is very different than me being in the Midwest in perhaps December. So, and that advice is there, and that advice stays there forever. So it's really hard to distinguish, who this person is, where is this person located, like how tall they are, what their body looks like, what their biology has been designed to be, because all you see is a face, right? So
Right.
I think that the system is not in purpose doing this, but in a way we have a bit of a disadvantage because of it. And it's like, if this guy successfully is telling me to do this, to wake up at this time, to, like this is a true recommendation of a very successful guy. There's so much value there, but in reality, I'm unique, my own situation, my biology, my family, etc.
Correct. They tell you that you should get 8 hours of sleep. Well, I'm one of those people that for a long time, I needed 9 hours of sleep.
And that's fine.
Period.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I knew when I didn't how it affected me. My body has changed. I'm going through menopause, and
Oh, yeah.
therefore my body has decided that some days 7 hours is all I'm going to get, and I'm fine with that. So it's about understanding what your body is currently going through, what it currently needs. And when you're exhausted, especially since you have young children, you are going to be more tired just because you're having to deal with the kids. And understanding that, making sure that you get the rest you need, even if it's, we're all going to lay down on the couch together and 15 minutes and rest. And sometimes that's all we need is that little bit of time for our body to rest, for us to ground ourselves again before we can go ahead and reboot.
I agree. You're touching on two very, very interesting topics. Both of them are very dear to my heart, so I'm having a hard time which direction to go with this, because I believe that sleep is like the number one behavior that align our neurochemistry, because so many reasons. It allows us to regenerate, to rest. Like neuroplasticity happens, autophagy. Like there's so many things that happen while we sleep that it really makes it very important to understand. Now, what I have learned and a lot of what I share is that part of the issue with society today is like we believe that there's this perfect routine that we are supposed to find and follow. And the one thing that I challenge there is that in one season, when it's very cold outside, when it's winter, when the sunset is happening at 4 p.m., that routine is actually very different from the summer when the sunset is happening at 9 p.m. and it's very hot and you're spending a lot of time outside. So I like to challenge that, and the first behavior that I believe that really assembles this is sleep. Is that the idea that consistent sleep, 8 hours. You go to sleep at this time and you wake up at this time, and then you force yourself into that because society has kind of ingrained in us that consistency, discipline is what makes a successful person, but in reality, that's not natural at all.
It isn't. And the reality, the reason that became very popular is because when we had the Industrial Revolution, then we needed to crank out certain things at certain times. And that made sense from a work perspective. But for many people, that timetable is not cohesive for their particular body type. And they need to look at what is good for them. And there are a lot of people that there's shift work that's available for those night owls. I am not a night owl. I have never been a night owl, but there are people that are, and you just have to be able to adapt for what you need for your body so that you can be as successful as you can with the body that you were given.
I love the fact that you're bringing to the conversation body types, so I would love to go deep there. Like, can you break it down, how you break down body types, and we can have a conversation about that?
So the main way I break down body types has more to do with your metabolism than it has to do with whatever size you are. So you have to know how your metabolism works. I have a very high strung metabolism. What that means is I can eat a lot of junk. And the worst thing that happens to me is I get inflammation. I'm Italian, so I grew up eating pasta 3 days a week, every week, up until 2014. And I've always hovered between 98 and 115 pounds, except when I was pregnant. The day my son was born, I weighed 125 pounds. That's the most I ever weighed in my entire life. So I'm this very little thing with a very, very high metabolism. But what I noticed when I hit perimenopause is that I started gaining weight. And that weight I was gaining was almost all inflammation. And how you can tell inflammation is I have very high cheekbones. When I got inflamed, my cheekbones, my whole face got puffy. Mm-hmm. And I can now look at people and say they have a lot of inflammation just by their face. By the way, you don't have a lot of inflammation, so good for you. But when you have inflammation, that is your body negatively reacting to something that you were putting into it. And what I found out, God forbid, you wouldn't believe it, it was the fact that I was eating all that pasta. Ooh. And the reason for it wasn't the pasta that was the issue. It was the gluten that is now in our food chain and in most pastas. So I found that if I ate an ancient grain pasta or a rice pasta or something else, I did not get the inflammatory response that I did with the wheat. So I'm gluten-free, not that I'm allergic, but that because my body does not handle processing that extra gluten that's in everything now. And I think a lot of people don't realize that the food supply that we have now is different than when I was a kid. When I used to eat McDonald's French fries, the ingredients were potatoes and tallow. That's were the two ingredients. Right now, I think potato is the 7th ingredient in a McDonald's French fry.
Yeah.
And it's cooked in seed oils. So we completely changed something that I used to be able to eat and not have an issue with. And nowadays, you won't find me going into a place like that because, we have changed a lot of how we are processing our food, and therefore we don't realize the change it's having in our body and the havoc that it's reacting to, because our body, when it doesn't know what to do with something, it becomes inflamed. That's the natural process. So if all of a sudden I start getting inflamed, I stop myself and say, okay, what have I eaten recently that has been different, out of the ordinary? Because I eat organic, I eat grass-fed, I'm eating those things that I'm supposed to do properly. So if I'm having an inflammatory response or my body's reacting to something, whether it's through a loose stool, whatever those conditions are, I have to stop and look at, what did I change? What did I alter? This is unusual and I need to take a look at it.
I think you hit a lot of great points. Inflammation being the beginning of all disease needs to,
Correct.
be our number one alert. But before even we hit the way we look, I feel that over time for me as well has become a reflection on the way I feel. So if I eating something and I feel heavy right away, I know it was that meal, and I know that meal doesn't sit well on me. And if I continue to eat that meal, I won't feel good. Now, what I think that is interesting is the fact that we have gone so far away from understanding the way we feel. And I'm not talking for myself. I'm talking for humanity, because
Correct.
there is so much crap that we eat as humans that some people, that's all they eat. And feeling good and feeling empty, perhaps, like without feeling bloated and inflamed, is something that a lot of people have not yet experienced, if that makes any sense.
No,
So,
absolutely.
so every time they eat something that makes them feel bloated, they just think that that's just how you are supposed to feel after you eat. But in reality, it's just because most of the food out there is junk. And if you're not being careful, I say I don't go to the extremes of being super picky about what I'm buying as much as I know I could be, but at least avoiding the obvious stuff, like
Right.
the refined carbs, the sugars, the obviously fast food. Like there is some of them that, is easily avoidable, that a lot of people is eating constantly. So I think that going back to inflammation, if you are being inflamed, you're just welcoming disease to your body long term.
Right. And what people, one of the, you hit the major ones. The major ones really come down to sugar, refined carbs. But what people really don't understand is how bad seed oils are. And the seed oils, when you actually look at studies concerning them, they cause brain damage. I mean, it's so and people don't realize that there are a lot of food that you think is organic, but still has seed oil, like hummus. Hummus is one of the most dangerous foods to eat if you don't make it yourself, because almost all of them, even the organic ones, have seed oils in them. Not just one, but two other seed oils in them. So you think you're doing so well because you're eating organic hummus with your veggies, and you're actually harming yourself.
Yeah, I think that's perhaps why I don't get too deep in that subject, just because the fact that it can become a long-term journey of knowing exactly what to do, because the reality is like only a very small percentage of the foods that you can easily find are good for you. Like there's going to be something.
Correct.
Again, I like ketchup. If you look at ketchup, like back in the day,
Oh
it
my
was
God.
just tomato, but now it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So you
Sugar is
don't,
the first ingredient.
yeah, you don't realize, but it's all over the food chain. And the reality is like, again, what they feed the cows, right? Like it's not even the meat itself is what comes from. So that's a very deep subject that I tend not to go too deep into, but in reality makes sense. Now, when it comes down to the seasons, like there are some easy choices that we can make, and I was wondering if you have been able to tune into that. For example, Chinese traditional medicine tell us like don't eat ice cream in the winter, right? Like that's
Right.
that's an obvious one. Change that cold beverage for hot tea or coffee, or something a little warmer, right? So I was wondering from a seasonal perspective, how easy can it be to apply those eating habits that align with the season we're living into?
So if you notice, if you pay attention to Mother Nature has a bunch of different fruits and vegetables that come very much alive and in season in the fall. So you have all your squashes and your pumpkins, and you have all those rooted vegetables that come into play. But there's a real scientific, biological reason for that. We start gaining the weight by eating all this extra carbs that are not normally in our diet from the spring and summer, so that we put on the necessary insulation for our bodies to keep us warm during the winter months. And then as we hit spring, we start eating the leaner things, and also we start losing the weight, because if you've in ancient times, in indigenous times, there were foods started getting less and less and less to have. So
Yeah.
that was the reason for it. So you never had, obese people because of the way the seasonal foods were. And we can do that along the same lines. If we look at, when you go to the grocery store, you really should only be in the fresh fruits and vegetables area. And then of course, you're gonna have to get meat, because We don't have the local farmers butchering our meat for us in most places anymore. So the meat aisle and the fruit and vegetable aisle, and you have to pay attention to what's in season. And just because it's there doesn't mean it's in season.
Yeah, I agree. So making things simple, which is, part of the simple math that I put together for people is like in the winter we're gonna be, especially it's just starting in the summer, and I try not to make it socially because people in Australia might be watching this. So their holidays are very different. But in the United
Correct.
States, starting in the fall is, you know, a lot of carbs and sugars and refined food. And the easy math here is to replace them with the vegetables that come out of the ground in the fall time, the squashes. So essentially, multi grains or complex starches. I always have a hard
Correct.
time saying it. If you just swap those two, you get satisfied because that's the thing. It's like our body has an instinct to survive that is activated from the fall into the winter so that we can put that extra layer of fat, which the body sees as energy. Like it's just energy.
Correct.
It's just energy. And if you didn't do that back in the day, you will die. So your body will create cravings for you. And the issue now is that it's just everywhere, right?
Correct.
That is the issue.
Right. And not only is that the issue, but the other part of that is when you are imbalanced with what you're putting into your body, that means that your brain is not sending out the correct signals. And for a lot of people, they don't realize that the gut microbiome is, you think you want something sweet, but the reality is that is the bad bacteria in your gut that wants the sweetness. They feed off the sugar. And so the less sugar you consume, you kill off the bad bacteria and you allow the good bacteria to come back into your system, especially if you're eating the whole vegetables and the fruits that our body naturally knows how to process those types of sugar versus a piece of candy, candy bar, or the processed carbs.
Yeah, that, I also find that it's interesting. So I bring this up because of integrating our mind, our body, like understanding what's really going on in the back of our brains. And food is also free serotonin and dopamine. Food is not just, nutritionist. Like when we eat something, we feel satisfied. Like there is a real joy and it's called serotonin. And when we want to eat something and we feel that trigger, what we're feeling is actually dopamine. And is the worse the food is, the cheapest kind of dopamine it is. And it's just like this cycle that is negative. And what it does is that over a winter, we're 15, 20, 25 pounds overweight. And the issue with that is, again, we're extremely inflamed. And how do you take away that, right? Like detoxing of all that. It's not like, oh, it's spring and all of a sudden you go back to eat berries. No, you keep doing the same thing. There is no awareness of the connection with what we eat, with how we move. It's all supposed to be the same. And it will be easy to say, yeah, just put a little bit of fat, you're going to lose it in the spring, but usually people keep it. That doesn't go away anymore.
Right. So for me in the winter, as we enter this season, I switch from, like in the spring and summer, I eat whole fat yogurt with berries. And then I'm not eating that anymore. Number one, the berries are out of season. Number two, that's cold stuff. That yogurt is cold, so I'm switching to things like whole grain avocado toast, where I'm getting that fat, I'm getting that complex carbohydrates, and yet and I'm feeling satisfied because in the spring and summer, when I'm eating the yogurt and the berries, I don't want anything heavy.
Yeah, you want it to be fat and light and more quantity,
correct,
perhaps. Like more.
correct.
I like to say that. So when I do my study in people's biology, and I ask a question about body types, so I break it in a specific manner, but I perhaps go about mesomorph, endomorph, and ectomorph, which are the primary body types in human population, and we break it down even more than that. But what is interesting is that somebody might be okay eating 3 meals a day, and then you have the mesomorphic body type that goes through energy very quickly, which might be you, Terry, and you are okay eating 6 times a day, for example. Now, that also depends on age and season and so on. But what I find interesting is that when you have your biological base, and for example, for me, it's like, 4 to 5 times a day is good. I realized that 5 is actually spring and summer, and the foods that I eat are supposed to be like faster metabolized, like, something that it might be in my system for less time than what I eat on the winter, like sturdies, soups and stews and meats. And because of that, in the winter, I realized I should be eating, 3 to 4 times, kind of 4 times being ideal. And then in the spring and summer, it's more like 4 to 5 times, being 5 times ideal. So there is also a seasonality with the frequency and the quality and the quantity of the food that we eat throughout the year.
Absolutely. So, like for me, breakfast in the wintertime tend to be 2 hard-boiled eggs, and then I eat a sweet potato for lunch. I have a handful of nuts in the afternoon, and then I have my evening meal. So for me, that's what my winter looks like. But in the spring and summer, I still do the 2 hard-boiled eggs, but then I go to something like the Greek yogurt with the handful of berries in them and a piece of fruit instead of the nuts, because I need the quicker, faster metabolized sugar, natural sugars. And in the wintertime, I need more sustenance because my body's shivering. So, when you shiver, when your body is trying to maintain body heat, you're using up a lot more of those complex carbs. So you need to make sure you have them. Otherwise, I would sit here and shiver and you won't like it, because I shiver really, it's a shaking thing. So yeah, it's not good for me.
So I want to add to that. Yeah, the studies that I have made, the metabolic states, which is different that or metabolism, so our metabolic state is higher in the winter than in the summer, which is a little counterintuitive, because you will think in the winter you go into survival, preserve energy, but in reality, since it's colder, your body has to use a few more resources. But what is interesting is that that's also why our brain slows down a little bit, or again, our metabolic states. And it's because our brain takes energy. So since we have to keep our body heat, our brain is like, well, let's get you into a second plane for now so that we don't go through that much energy. So I want to bring this up because I would like to switch the conversation, because as we're looking at when it comes down to living good lives that are productive, that we have a purpose in this life and we're going after it in a sustainable manner. But when it comes down to everything that we have spoke of, like, why does it matter? Like, what does it matter how we eat? What does it matter to know the season? What does it matter to be in connection with nature? Like, if we live in a society that all it values is output, then why does that matter, right? I think there is a middle ground in between where they meet.
So for me, that middle ground is in my purpose. We each come to our school knowing what we're supposed to be and knowing what we're supposed to do. We know our purpose, and it's simple: to love and be loved. That is why we're all here, to love and be loved. And when we come into our familiar units, that's the first unknown that we have to deal with. And some of us come into very loving environments. I did not come into a very loving environment. And so we go through our own personal struggles. And I had trauma as a child that I had to deal with and overcome. And when we realize that our purpose is really to become who we were authentically meant to be in the first place, because a lot of times what we do when we have trauma, when we have difficulties to go through, we armor up. We put on masks, we put on armor, we put on defense mechanisms. And, I use an analogy of a thorny blanket, because when you wrap yourself up in a blanket and you don't realize that this thorny blanket has thorns in it, because that's your pain. You know what pain feels like. And when you start the healing process and you start taking off the thorny blanket, a couple of things happen. Number one, you're cold and you didn't realize you were cold. Number two, you didn't realize the thorns were there, and now you see that you have open wounds and you're bleeding in some places. In other places, there's pus because it's going gangrene. This is part of the healing journey, that we don't realize that there is new pain to go through to heal. When you cut yourself and it scabs over, if you pick at that scab and take it off and it's bleeding again, it's going to scab over again. And you can make it worse and worse and worse unless just leaving it alone and let the body heal. We are the same way from an emotional aspect. And that for a lot of us, we don't deal with, we pick at our wounds. And when we deal with and move through the healing process of our journey, and we're all on our own hero's journey. We're all here for a reason. We're all here for a purpose. And for me, I know that my purpose was to overcome and then help others overcome. So that is why I know I'm here. But for me to overcome, I had to get in touch with who I authentically was. And you can't do that when you're being bombarded by society on what you're supposed to be, who you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do. And you have to get quiet.
Yeah.
And you have to get to know your soulful self, that still quiet voice within you that's always saying, whispering to you, you're doing good. Yes, that's it. Be curious. Go ahead, take the next step. It'll be okay. I'm here with you. And in those healing journey steps, we become very present because we can't heal if we're living in the past. That's called depression. And we can't heal by looking at the future. That's called anxiety. We can only heal in the present moment. And we can only be fully present if we pause and realize that this present moment, Ruben and I are having a very soulful conversation about subjects that are important to us and that we like them so much and we believe in them so much and how they help us. We want to share it with others because we want to help other people. And ultimately, everybody's purpose comes down to sharing your gifts with the world.
Amen. Yeah, I agree. As you mentioned that, I'm thinking, okay, love, okay, purpose. This has helped me unlock my purpose, and that's why I'm so passionate about sharing it with others because I know of its potential. So, like, it all came back what I was thinking at the beginning and then towards the end. And I want to bring this forward because I think it's very important, and this might be related to, again, living in seasons and understanding the environment, is that those different seasons kind of give us opportunities to see ourselves and to experience the world from different angles and different perspectives. And I think I see that as a gift. You know, life is very monotonous. Like, it's just the same day after day, 365 days a year if you don't really look in sync to what's happening around you. And I think that this is a gift, but we have to look around because even though you are there, if you are not present, everything just passes by.
Correct.
And what is interesting is that I like to call it like it makes you a victim. So if you are not conscious of that environmental shift that is happening around you, you become victim to it because your neurochemical states, your survival instincts, your memories, there's so much that triggers in your subconscious mind that when you are not aware and you're not paying attention to be present and see how you're feeling and properly adjust, you're just adjusting without knowing. You're unconsciously following those triggers. And I like to say then the environment makes you a victim.
Correct. And the reality comes down to the fact that the only way for you to heal and move forward with your healing journey comes down to awakening. Awakening to the fact that there is a problem. Awakening to the fact that you have all the answers within you to, if you're willing to do the work and to help you find the solutions. Whether it is, for a lot of people, the fact that they don't know how to ground themselves. We have so many people in the society that are just fearful about everything and anxious all the time. And you have to wonder why didn't they learn how to ground themselves? And I remember as a very young child knowing that I needed to go sit by the creek. Didn't know why, but when I went to sit by the creek, everything was okay. Again, that's that reconnection with nature. That's that slowing down. That's the realization that there's too much extraneous stuff going around.
Yeah.
I need to get quiet.
I
And
like
when you
to
get
go deeper
quiet,
there. I like to
okay?
go so deep there because grounding is one of those things that, number one, we can look from different angles. So I will start by our parasympathetic and our sympathetic system being out of harmony. I like to say they're out of harmony, not out of balance, because they are meant to go up and down.
Correct, they
So
are.
they're never meant to be in balance. They're just meant to be in harmony. And when we are not grounding, that tends to be out of whack. It's usually because we are stressed, we are fearful, we are in a state of something is wrong, what it is, I gotta pay attention. And what I find interesting is, again, seasonal transitions tend to trigger that from a subconscious perspective. So especially going from summer to fall, this cold weather starts showing up, and instinctively our brains go, pay attention. I'm going to give you a little bit of cortisol so that you look around and make sure you gather all your stuff so that you are safe for the winter because it's coming. I recognize I'm a pattern recognition machine, and I'm just going to guide you so that you become aware. And the issue now is that since we're not recognizing that stress gets triggered. And since we don't do anything about it, what's going to do your brain the next day, right? Going to trigger another one, and it becomes chronic stress. So something that I like to practice is the seasons method, which one of them is outdoor connection. Another one is nurturing loving relationships. But one of the kind of hacks, and I don't like calling them hacks, but there's not really another way to do it because convenient, I think, over trumps quality. So if I tell somebody, hey, go barefoot, hug a tree in the middle of the winter, it's not very convenient. But if I say, hey, put this grounding mat in your bed. So now we're getting into synthetic solutions to an environmental inconvenience. So I do know that we can breathe. I do know that we can do many different things to ground. But I like to acknowledge that as the seasons change, that grounding practice actually goes out the window. imagine living on this 16-degree weather for a long time and don't really kind of acknowledging the fact that we're spending our time indoors, that I don't have a plant nearby, that I'm not grounding. And the effects of grounding, they are felt. Like you feel when
Correct.
you are outside barefoot in nature and you're spending all your summers and springs there. So I always realized, at one point I realized this has to be affecting people. Like they are not grounding in the winter. Like there has to be, and again, we can go deep there. I think it's extremely important to recognize as when the environment shifts, how even the practice of grounding completely shifts.
Correct. Correct. Everything has a season. And that's where, for most adults, we don't tend to move through the world in a cyclical seasonal pattern, whether it's from the moon's perspective, whether it's from the weather perspective. And if we adjust through that in ways that keep us grounded, ways that our body then knows that when that cortisol is triggered because it's gotten colder, that we just make sure that we have the whole grain bread and we have more meats, more stews, so that our body then recognizes, hey, we're doing the right things, everything's
Let
good, and
go.
release and let go of the cortisol. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, like you mentioned, it's just giving your body a reason to let go. It's that simple, right? Because you
Correct.
can do all the positive talk you want, and I'm sure it will help. Like the reality is that the power of the mind is great. But what I trying to do that is a little different is working from the environment, which I also believe is very powerful. It doesn't mean that one trumps the other or you can have one way or the other. The reality is you can, and I am a believer that you should have both. This is a spiritual journey of the mind and the body.
Correct.
And when we recognize that we live in this three-dimensional world, like we are in our five senses, or eyes, or hearing, the temperature, the sounds, like we live in a world where our five senses are activated.
Correct.
So sure, let's do the mind work. Let's do the breathing. Let's go there. The mind has power, but also our senses. So it's kind of trying to bring consciousness. And for what reason? I do believe that it allows us to be more effective in our purpose, like we just expressed earlier. I truly that's what it comes down
Absolutely.
to.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, you were talking about with the seasons and our bodies not really understanding or knowing because we stay inside all the time. But one of the things that you can easily do is take an Epsom salt bath. When if you take an Epsom salt bath, that helps ground, and it is warmth. It warms your body, and it allows you to release, so that as you're sitting in the tub, it's a very relaxing environment,
Yeah,
and it allows you that natural release. So we should be taking more baths in
yeah,
the wintertime, because those, yes, a quick shower will do the trick, but when you allow your body to soak and you allow your body to rest in that soaking, the amount of change that you can actually activate and ground yourself is just tremendous from a 20-minute bath.
I
That's
agree.
all it takes.
I made an investment in my house, and it has Clorox, which Clorox is pretty bad for you. But I have a hot tub, and what I like to recognize is how certain tools are literally a superpower, but usually they're a superpower for like 6 months of the year. And for example, the hot tub is just one of them. The same that my happy light, like wintertime, every night, every other night, go in the hot tub, and just for the reasons that you mentioned. And then in the
Right.
summertime, I don't use it at all. The same
Yeah.
that my happy light, my blue light therapy light, I don't use it. The same that my red light, I don't use it. Like why? Because I'm outside all day. So what is interesting is how there are great tools out there. There are great frameworks and mindsets, but I do believe that adding that seasonality to it is really what makes that sustainable progress year after year. Otherwise, it's very common to see people spending money on tools and programs, and then it work like I'm on right now, I feel great. Then the transition happens from to the next season, and then they put the tool on Facebook Marketplace, and
Yeah.
even worse, like they feel some sort of shame that they are not doing it. It's like, I'm not committed enough, or I'm not, disciplined enough. And I think it's just the most natural thing to go to let go of those things. But since there is this, be committed, be disciplined, be consistent, then it plays an actual negative trick in our head.
So one of my tricks that I do is, if I have a tool that I'm using and I quit using it, I remind myself. I'll actually put it on my calendar. So if it's if I'm not outside grounding and you have a grounding mat, then you can go ahead and, come November, put on my calendar, pull out grounding mat.
Yeah.
And it's just a reminder so that since I'm not going to be outside as much, this is a way that I can still ground in a way that is still healthy for me, so I don't lose that when I put it away in the spring because I'm outside again.
I love it. So what you're touching on is the process of documenting. Number one, becoming aware the moment that that changes, releasing the shame, if any existed. But you're saying if that even crosses our mind, it's like, wait a minute, there's no shame here. There's actually something happening. Let me look around and see why. Oh, because I'm spending more time outdoors. And then the documenting process happens. So that's why we go through our seasonal projects, which is season after season, we adjust and transition, but we leave the clues or where we left. Like what worked really good for the next 3 months, because then, like you're saying, next year, that routine goes back in place because that's what feels great. But it's
Right.
so often so easy to forget.
It is. And one of the things I tend to do a lot of writing on what to do in what I call the off season. And we're getting ready to enter the off season. And the off season means for me that I'm going to go inward. I'm going to look at what did I learn over the year?
Yes.
What should I implement for next year? And I spend the last week of the year creating a vision board where I am purposefully looking at things that I want to do. I'm creating lists. So, for example, I'm creating a list of those things that I want to learn next year, whether it is like I want to crochet. So I have everything I need. I just need to sit down and learn to do it. So this off season is a period of time. Yeah. I'm already indoors anyway. Yeah. This is a good time to pick that up so that maybe next fall I've created a scarf for myself or a little hat for myself, those things that will be beneficial later. So these are the times where when you look to document those things, making lists is always a way to start, because a lot of times we have issues with creating, what did I learn? So the way I do that throughout the year is at the end of every month, I go back through my calendar and say, okay, these are the things that I experienced. What were my lessons for this month? And then in the back of my calendar, I write down what those lessons were.
Yeah,
so
wonderful.
At the end of the year, I can look at, okay, these are the lessons I learned. How do I keep that momentum and make sure that I'm implementing those things that I have learned?
So two things that I want to highlight: the energy of the winter going inwards and pulling you into assessing. So I like to say that the winter is not to do less, it's to do things differently. Because it's not like you're just sitting by the sideline and don't doing anything. It does work. Like reflecting on looking back at the year and seeing what worked, that takes time. And that's worth your time and your effort. And then testing perhaps. I think that the winter is a great time to test a little bit here and there and project. Why? Because when the spring arrives, you kind of want to have your direction pick, because when the energy comes up, now you can hit and increase the volume and go even harder. So I like to say that it's not like the winter is just to do nothing, it's to do differently. And what is interesting is that if you try to do that in the spring or the summertime, it doesn't come as natural. The energy is outward. You want to kind of get going. You want to move. You want to plan. You want to be outside. You want to talk to people. But in the winter, that's the most natural thing to do. So it's understanding the energy of the season, of the environment, and leveraging it to live a better life. Like that's what you're doing. You are understanding that's what is out there, and then you leverage it. And that's exactly like the best way of doing it.
If you look back at indigenous families as well as families of the 1800s, you're talking about farmers. And during the wintertime, that is when they were dealing with fixing plows. That's when all the fixing occurred in the wintertime. That is also when you were canning in the fall and everything so that you had food for the winter. So there was different activities than what happens in the spring, which is now you're tilling the land and you're planting. So very, very different things, but they're all work. It's all, everybody the focus of the work is different.
And I like to say the farmer is the best analogy I have ever found about, the ideal way to living sync with the seasons because of that. Like, it's not like they're just sitting around in the winter. I see a lot of farmers having negative habits that come in the winter. It doesn't mean they don't do anything, but some stuff pops because the environment pops those addictions, perhaps.
Right.
But in reality, it's not always the same. There is high and lows, and it's all about bringing harmony into those ups and downs throughout the year.
Correct.
I like to say it's like bringing and being the yin yang, like living through that curve that is harmonious it's no balance, it's not a straight line, or it's like a constantly going up line. There is a little bit of a curve to it, and we can optimize. Like we can make it just a little going a little higher or a little lower, but always within the mean. You know, always within the mean, because the reality is that we're in the 21st century productivity, and we have goals and purpose, and there's this drive towards producing. And sure, we can use that. That's what I really love about this. It's a sustainable way of using that, as long as we stay within the medium. You know, acknowledging, honoring what's there, leveraging it to optimize, but within reason. And to finalize your previous comment, I love how you integrate novelty into your seasons, right? Like this time of the year, you're already indoors. You have a little bit more time. We're not talking about, like you're still, producing, but you have this little bit of time on hand. And what I find interesting is, from a neurological perspective, what that does to our brain. So if you look at the winter, everything outside is a little more on the gray side. There is less social interaction. There is less movement already. Again, we can all make this happen by putting ourselves out there and doing more, and even going in. Like, this is not a limiting, but a tendency, right? And then what that does to our brain is, like, we don't have as much excitement, perhaps, or we don't have as much, like, satisfaction in the moment. Like, it's a little more toned down. And I feel that when we have that weekly novelty activity waiting for us, which for you in this case is quelting. You didn't use the word quelting, but I think it's the same, right?
Yes.
For me, it's basketball. So it's like bringing that activity during this specific season that will be good for you, and knowing that, hey, I'm not going to be doing this all year round. Like, this is limited. Let me enjoy it. So I think that has such a benefit for not just in that activity, but as we go through our week. It gives us motivation to live and enjoy this season. And I think a lot of people miss that.
Yeah. Right now is a time of year where people start ice skating. So you can only do that in the wintertime. Even here in Atlanta, the ice skating rinks are now all open. Those are those things that you can still get outside and still do. And it's novel. It's not something that you get to have all the time. So those are always those good little things to have on the horizon as a pick-me-up, as a motivator to go through the week to go have that fun activity.
I agree. So as we close, I want to let everybody know that we will have all the contact information for Terry in our description. We have a book. If you want to let us know a little bit more about it, please.
Sure. The book is Soul Solutions for Awakening Awareness. Awareness is that first step for all of us to awaken and to move forward into those things by realizing that we want more in life. We want, whether it is to be more, to be healthier, to overcome something, to learn something new, to have that growth mindset, we have to become aware of where we are. And that's the first step. And Soul Solutions for Awakening Awareness walks you through that process. And that's the second book. My first book is Raven Transcending Fear, which is my memoir of overcoming child sexualhood trauma. Different subject, but that's...
Different subject, yeah.
Yes.
So that first step of awareness, like, a great place to start, right? Becoming aware. I agree. I have enjoyed our conversation. I know that we can perhaps do a second episode because we have so much in common.
We do.
Yeah, I love the fact that we have hit in very important subjects, like the fact that we're unique. The fact that we have to get to know ourselves from a biological and a psychological perspective. It's not just one or the other. Both are very important because we have a mind, we have a body, we have a spirit, and they look at life from a different perspective. So we want to acknowledge that. So I love our episode, and I thank you so much, Terry, for your time. If you want to leave us with that last piece of wisdom or, a goodbye for our audience, that would be great. This would be the time.
Well, the last thing I want to say is that you are enough, just as you are. And if you awaken to that awareness of who you authentically are and know that you are just enough, then everything else falls into place. Your purpose falls into place, and your ability to overcome and that resilience all comes from understanding who you authentically are as you move through this world.
Well, thank you so much, Terry. And you guys, thank you for watching. As always, keep it seasonal, and I will see you in the next episode.